Okay, everyone, my name is Julia Baldwin. This is my final project for Mr. Rogers' Introduction to Humanities class. It will be about the life and inspirations and the works of Nicholas Sparks. This is my table of contents. First, we'll go over the background, which will be his basic information like where he was born. Then it'll go into early life, his journey to success, how his career began, and his inspirations. Then we'll cover a number of his popular works. I'll do 4 of his most popular, beginning with The Notebook, A Walk to Remember, Dear John, and Safe Haven. And then I'll wrap it all up in the conclusion with his impact and where he is now. Okay, so beginning with the background, here's his basic information. He was born on December 31st in 1965 in Omaha, Nebraska. He was the second of 3 children. His father was a college student, still in his education to become a college professor. His mom did not have a career. She stayed home with the kids, and he was raised as, and still is, a Catholic. In the picture, you will see him in the bottom left. In the top will be his dad and his mom, and then the other 2 are his younger sister and his older brother. His early life. In his early childhood, Nick's family moved around a lot because of his father's graduate work. They moved first from Minnesota to Los Angeles, then to Nebraska, and finally they moved back to California to Fair Oaks, and that's where they finally settled down. He graduated in Fair Oaks, California from a school called Bella Vista High School. He graduated in 1984, and he was his class's valedictorian. Okay, his journey to success. He attended the University of Notre Dame as a business major after high school. He had a full scholarship there as a track and field student. During his freshman year, he was part of a relay team, and he ended up with an injury to his Achilles tendon, which forced him to sit out of physical activity for that summer. Because he was not able to do his sports, he stayed in, and that's when he began to take up writing. That summer, he finished his first novel, which was never actually published. In 1988, during spring break of his senior year, he met Catherine Coate, who would become his wife a year later in 1989. 6 weeks later, after the marriage, Nicholas's mother was killed in a horseback riding accident. Him and Catherine then moved back to Sacramento because of the event when his mother died. It encouraged him to take writing up again, and that's when he finished a second book, which was also never published. He eventually found a job at owning a business that manufactured orthopedic goods. In 1994, he was part of the book that was called Walk and I, A Lakota Journey to Happiness and Self-Understanding. He worked with Billy Mills on this book, and it ended up being published by Random House. In 1992, he had sold his business of the manufacturing orthopedic goods, and he ventured into sales of pharmaceuticals. At this point, he had already made a plan, after so many failed attempts of being published in writing and never getting anywhere, that he could only write 3 more novels. And at that point, if he still had not gotten anything published, he would stop writing completely. And then in June of 1994, he began writing The Notebook, and it was completed within 6 months. Beginning his career, in early 1995, when he finished The Notebook, he found an agent and a publisher right away. Right after, he had a book deal and a movie contract that was worth $1 million. Right after this, however, his father was killed in an automobile accident at only 54. In the grief of this, he turned to writing a novel just as he had after his mother had died, and this was the start of the novel Message in a Bottle. He continued to sell pharmaceuticals until February of 1997, which was when The Message in a Bottle was sold to Hollywood Studio before he had even finished it, and in 1999 the story was transformed into a film. His inspirations. Nicholas Sparks was very family-oriented. In many of his interviews, he talks about the inspirations for his works, and more often than not, they're about family members or family of those he knows. Message in a Bottle was a novel about a man who wrote letters to his deceased wife and sent them to sea in bottles. And in an interview, he said that that was inspired by his parents' relationships. He also shared that his wife had been the influence of many of his novels. In a 2012 interview, he said, "All of the female characters I create have many elements from my wife." Okay, now we're going to move on to the popular works of him. These are the ones we'll cover. The Notebook from 1996, A Walk to Remember, 1999, Dear John, 2006, and Safe Haven in 2010. Alright, let's start with The Notebook. It was published on October 1st, 1996 by Warner Books. It was on the New York Times bestseller list within its first week. The hardcover was a bestseller for more than a year. It was inspired by his wife's grandparents. It follows an elderly man who visits a woman in a nursing home and reads her story from a journal. The journal is about two young teenagers who fall in love, but because the girl's family comes from those of wealth and the boy's does not, the girl's parents does not allow the relationship. To forbid them, they move themselves and the daughter far away to keep the couple from being together. And the daughter returns back years later, and she ends up seeing the boy again, but only they cannot be together then because she is engaged to someone else that her family approves of. The film adaptation of this book was released in 2004. Okay, A Walk to Remember. This one was published on October 1st of 1999 by Warner Books. The book received mixed criticism. Some people said they liked it, some people said they didn't. It was what some people would call corny or very predictable. It was based in North Carolina in the late 1950s. It was two teenagers with different personalities, different lives, and they end up falling in love anyways. The girl was the daughter of a preacher who stayed home and just did her schoolwork and focused on helping her family. And he was not very great in school. He was one of the people that had a lot of friends and participated in all the extracurriculars and that stuff. But they still managed to fall in love. The film adaptation was released on January 25th of 2002. Dear John. It was published on August 7th of 2006 by Grand Central Publishing. It was on the New York Times bestseller list in 2007. It begins with a young couple, John and Savannah, who fell in love over one summer. John's father had a poor health condition, but he was always in denial about it. He would never take him to a doctor, just said he was fine. Through this difficult time, he felt lost. He didn't know what to do. So he enlisted and went away to the military. Upon his return, he searches for Savannah, only he finds her married to another man. The film adaptation was released in 2010. And finally, the last book is a recent one. It was published in July of 2010 by Grand Central Publishing. This story follows a young woman who is trying to escape an abusive husband. She leaves her home and she tries to start over. She changes her name and her looks so that he can't find her. She basically gets on a bus and rides it until a random stop. She gets off somewhere, just not planning to stay there, just getting off to go into the store. And then she decides that she likes it and she stays there. She makes friends there, she gets a job there, and after that, her ex-husband has finally found her, and he shows up and begins to cause trouble with them. He's a cop, so he released flyers saying that she was wanted for first-degree murder. So the people that she had met there and became friends with didn't trust her after that. They thought she was a murderer and that she was on the run. The film adaptation of this book was released in 2013. Okay, now the conclusion of his life and his career, where he is today. He now has 5 children with his wife Catherine. However, in January of 2015, in an interview, he announced that he and his wife had separated. The marriage had lasted 25 years. He is still publishing novels. He has served as a movie producer in the film adaptation of many of his books. His latest release is a book called 2 by 2 that was released on October 4th of 2016. And he constantly contributes to various charities and schools with the money that he has made from his novels and movie productions. His impact on humanities, this is basically just how he puts forward to help people that are looking into the same career as him. He promotes writers by funding different scholarships and intern programs and fellowships just to help them get through it if that's what they wish to follow. He started MFA, which is a creative writing program at the University of Notre Dame, which is where he graduated from. Over time, he has donated more than $10 million for the building of a Christian international school. And the Nicholas Sparks Foundation, it was launched in 2011. His wife, Catherine, had actually helped him create this. It was basically a nonprofit committed to improving cultural and international understanding through global education experiences for all students of all age. It just helps people who wish to follow the same path that he did and aids them in the funding and giving them experiences that they wouldn't have gotten before. Okay, and these are my sources. Thank you guys for listening, and that's all.